The council chamber buzzed with conversation as delegates from across the galaxy took their seats. The massive circular room had witnessed countless debates, treaties, and decisions over the centuries. Today should have been no different from any other quarterly session. Lord Tharmex, the Vrexian chair, settled into his elevated platform at the center of the chamber. His 4 eyes scanned the room, counting attendance. Most delegations had arrived on time. The Kashari were present, their feathered crests bright under the chamber lights. The Torvan delegation huddled together, their small frames clustered around their shared workspace. The Orothians stood silent as always, their tall forms like living statues. But one section remained empty. The human delegation had not arrived. Tharmex felt a flash of irritation. Ambassador Jiwan Park was usually punctual, sometimes arriving early to chat with other delegates. Her absence was unusual, but not concerning. Humans were often involved in small emergencies, rushing off to help some species with some minor problem. They would arrive soon, full of apologies. "We shall begin," Tharmex announced, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "The human delegation appears to be delayed. We will proceed without them and update them later on what they missed." A few delegates nodded. Others seemed uncertain. The Kashari delegate, Tanash, tilted her head in a gesture of concern but said nothing. The session moved forward. They discussed trade routes through the outer reaches, where 2 species were locked in a territorial dispute. They reviewed reports on increasing pirate activity along the frontier. They debated resource allocation for various council programs. An hour passed, then 2. Still no humans. During a recess, Tharmex instructed an aide to contact the human embassy compound. The aide returned 15 minutes later, her expression confused. "Lord Chair, the embassy compound is empty," she reported quietly. "Empty? What do you mean, empty?" Tharmex demanded. "There is no one there, sir. The buildings are locked. Everything is clean and organized, but there are no humans present anywhere in the compound." Tharmex waved a dismissive hand. "They must be at some function. A cultural event, perhaps. Humans are always organizing such things." But the aide shook her head. "Sir, I checked with station security. All human citizens departed on various transports over the past 3 days. Every single one of them has left council space." The words hung in the air. Tharmex stared at his aide, certain he had misheard. "All of them? That is impossible. There are thousands of human citizens living and working in council space." "Yes, sir, and they have all left. Security records confirm it." Tharmex called the council back into session early. He announced the situation, trying to maintain a tone of authority. "It appears the human delegation has chosen to make some kind of statement by absenting themselves from council space. No doubt they will return once they have made their point. In the meantime, we have important work to continue." But something felt wrong to many in the chamber. Humans did not make dramatic gestures. They were the ones who stayed late after meetings, helping to draft compromise language that everyone could accept. They were the ones who remembered birthdays and cultural holidays for every species. They were the ones who showed up. Tanash spoke up, her voice careful. "Lord Chair, with respect, humans have never been dramatic. They have never made empty gestures. If they left, they had a reason." "Then they should have communicated that reason," Tharmex snapped. "Walking away without explanation is childish." "Perhaps they did communicate," suggested a Torvan delegate in a small voice. "And we did not listen." The comment created uncomfortable silence. Tharmex moved the session along quickly, eager to avoid further discussion. That evening, a junior Torvan administrator named Kelvin was assigned to inspect the human embassy compound and prepare an inventory of abandoned property. He approached the task with sadness. He had worked with many humans over the years and considered some of them friends. The compound was eerily quiet. Kelvin walked through the empty halls, his footsteps echoing. Everything was pristine. The humans had not left in chaos or anger. They had cleaned, organized, and carefully packed. In the main conference room, Kelvin found equipment that the council had provided to the human delegation over the years. Computers, communication devices, furniture, all neatly arranged. Nothing was damaged or missing. On the central table, he found something that made his throat tighten. Gifts. Dozens of gifts that various delegates had given to human representatives over the decades. A Kashari crystal singing bowl, a Vrexian ceremonial blade, a Torvin family tapestry, a carved Orathian meditation stone. Each item was carefully displayed with a small card identifying the giver and the occasion. In the center of this display sat a simple handwritten note. Kelvin picked it up with trembling hands and read, "Thank you for the opportunity to serve alongside you. We will treasure the memories of our time together. We leave these gifts behind, not because we do not value them, but because they belong here, in the place where they were given, as reminders of what friendship can be. May you find the unity you seek. With respect and hope for your future, the human delegation." Kelvin sat down heavily in one of the empty chairs. He read the note 3 times, each reading making his chest ache more. This was not anger. This was not drama. This was goodbye. He remembered a conversation he had with Ambassador Park 6 months ago. She had seemed tired, more than usual. He had asked if she was well. "Just weary, Kelvin," she had said with a sad smile. "Sometimes I wonder if we are actually helping, or if we are just here to be ignored." He had laughed it off at the time, assuring her that her work was valuable. But had he ever actually told anyone in authority that humans were essential? Had he ever spoken up when Tharamex dismissed human concerns as too emotional or impractical? Kelvin carefully photographed the display and the note. He sent his report to the council that night, attaching the images. He included one final line in his report. "The humans did not abandon us. They left behind everything we gave them, with gratitude. Perhaps we should ask ourselves what we failed to give them in return." The message reached the council members as they prepared for sleep. Most filed it away to read later. A few read it and felt the first stirrings of unease. Tanash read it 3 times, like Kelvin had read the note. Then she began searching the council archives, looking for something she could not quite name, but knew she would recognize when she found it. The empty human seats in the council chamber remained empty that night. They would remain empty for a long time to come, and the galaxy would soon learn the difference between presence and absence. 2 weeks had passed since the humans left. Lord Tharmix insisted that council business continue as normal. Most delegates tried to believe him, but normal was becoming harder to maintain with each passing day. The first real crack appeared in the outer reaches. 2 species, the Valter and the Gen, had been arguing over a border region for nearly a year. The dispute was complicated, involving historical claims, resource rights, and cultural significance. For months, human mediators had been working with both sides, slowly building trust, finding common ground. Now those mediators were gone. The Valtor and Gen representatives met for their scheduled negotiation session. Without human mediators present, they had to talk directly to each other. Within 20 minutes, insults were exchanged. Within an hour, both delegations walked out. 3 days later, Valtor ships fired on a Gen mining outpost. The Gen retaliated by destroying a Valtor supply depot. The border dispute had become a shooting war. The council held an emergency session. Tharmex assigned Vrexian diplomats to take over the mediation. "We will resolve this quickly," he announced with confidence. "The Vrexians have centuries of diplomatic experience." The Vrexian diplomats arrived in the disputed zone with a simple message for both sides. "Accept our proposed border or face council sanctions." The Valtor refused. The Gen refused. Both species resented being threatened instead of heard. The fighting escalated. Ships that had been trading partners for decades now hunted each other through asteroid fields. Colonies that had coexisted peacefully began evacuating their populations. Tanash watched the situation deteriorate and felt a cold understanding settle over her. The humans had not solved problems by being powerful or threatening. They had solved problems by listening, by caring, by making every species feel heard and respected. The Vrexians were trying to impose solutions. The humans had built consensus. But the border war was not the only crisis emerging. The Council's refugee resettlement program was collapsing. For decades, humans had volunteered to take in refugees from disaster zones and war-torn regions. Their worlds were not the largest or richest in the Council, but they had always found room. Millions of displaced people from dozens of species had found temporary or permanent homes in human space. Now those humans were gone, and the refugees they had been sheltering were stranded. Emergency facilities meant for short-term housing were overwhelmed. Food supplies ran low. Medical care became scarce. The Council sent out requests for other species to accept refugees. The responses were disappointing. The Vrexians cited atmospheric incompatibility. The Torvin claimed their worlds were too densely populated already. The Orothians said their culture could not accommodate outsiders. Every species had an excuse. All the excuses were technically valid. None of them changed the fact that millions of people had nowhere to go. Tanash began spending her evenings in the Council archives. She was looking for something specific now. She wanted to understand exactly what humans had been doing for the past century. Everyone knew they were present, but what had they actually done? What she discovered troubled her deeply. Humans served on almost every council committee. They maintained the historical archives, ensuring accurate records of all proceedings. They managed diplomatic protocols, training new member species on council procedures. They coordinated disaster relief efforts across the galaxy. They operated a network of neutral medical facilities that treated patients from any species without requiring payment or political approval. The list went on and on. Humans had been everywhere, doing everything, and somehow remaining nearly invisible. They never claimed credit. They never demanded recognition. They just worked. Tanash noticed something else. Humans rarely held positions of obvious power. They were not military commanders or trade authority chairmen. They did not control resources or make policy, but they were present in every structure, like mortar between bricks. Individually small, collectively essential. She compiled her research into a report and invited a small group of delegates to review it. The Torvin administrator Kelvin attended, along with a Kashari military officer named Sharva and a Gen economist named Chenli. They met in a small conference room far from the main council chambers. Tanash presented her findings carefully. Humans have served the Council for 137 years, she began. In that time, they have participated in over 10,000 Council operations. They have mediated 412 disputes. They have coordinated relief efforts for 78 major disasters. They have resettled 14 million refugees. They have trained representatives from 32 species on Council procedures. Chenli, the Gen economist, looked uncomfortable. I did not realize the scope was so large. No one did, Tanash said quietly, because they never asked us to notice. But look at what is happening now. The border war between your people and the Valtor, the refugee crisis, the coordination failures in our joint military operations. All of these problems existed before, but humans kept them manageable. They were the foundation, and we never looked down to see what was holding us up. Sharva, the military officer, nodded slowly. I command a mixed species patrol group. We have had 3 serious incidents in the past 2 weeks. Misunderstandings between species, communication breakdowns. Before, we had a human liaison officer. She knew everyone's protocols, everyone's cultural sensitivities. She prevented problems before they started. "What happened to her?" Kelvin asked. "She left with the others," Sharva said. "I did not even say goodbye. I did not think she was important enough to deserve a farewell." The room fell silent. The weight of that admission pressed down on all of them. "We must bring this to the full council," Chenley said. "Will they listen?" Kelvin asked. "Lord Tharmex has made it clear he considers the human absence a temporary inconvenience." Tanash gathered her reports. "They will listen, or they will face the consequences. The foundation is gone. The building is starting to crack. Soon it will collapse, and then everyone will understand what we lost." She scheduled a presentation to the full council for the following week. As she prepared, news arrived of another crisis. A plague had broken out in one of the overcrowded refugee facilities. The facility had been designed for 5,000 occupants. It currently held 15,000. The council called for medical assistance. Ships were dispatched, supplies were gathered, and medical teams were assembled. But coordination was chaotic. Different species had different medical protocols. Communication was difficult. Priorities conflicted. By the time the medical teams arrived, 3 days had passed. 2,000 refugees had died. In the past, human medical ships would have been there within hours. Their facilities were always open, always ready, always welcoming to any species. They asked no questions about payment or politics. They simply helped. But now the human medical stations throughout council space were gone. The humans had taken them when they left. No one had noticed they were there until they vanished. Tanash added the plague to her report. The evidence was mounting. The question was whether the council would accept the truth before it was too late. She looked at the empty human seats in the council chamber and wondered if Ambassador Park had known this would happen. Had the humans left as a lesson, or had they simply given up hope that the council would ever change? Either way, the price of that departure was being paid in blood and suffering, and the bill was only beginning to come due. 1 month after the humans left, the council faced a crisis that could no longer be ignored. Pirate attacks along the frontier had increased dramatically. Raiders were hitting shipping lanes, attacking isolated colonies, and disappearing before military forces could respond. Lord Tharmex convened an emergency military council. Representatives from a dozen species gathered to coordinate a response. This should have been simple. The council had vast military resources and experienced commanders. But nothing was simple anymore. The Vrexian admiral wanted an aggressive sweep of known pirate hiding spots. The Kashari commander preferred a defensive strategy, protecting key trade routes. The Torvan captain suggested a network of small, fast patrol groups. The Erothian fleet commander said nothing, which could mean agreement or disagreement, and no one was certain which. They argued for 6 hours and reached no consensus. Each species had valid points. Each species also distrusted the other's motives. Were the Vrexians trying to grab territory under the guise of anti-piracy operations? Were the Kashari being defensive because they were secretly trading with the pirates? Was Torvan intelligence sharing complete, or were they holding back information? The meeting ended with no clear plan. Each species agreed to patrol their own regions and share intelligence through council channels. It was the best they could manage. Commander Sharva attended that meeting and left feeling sick. She remembered joint operations from just 2 months ago. They had been smooth, efficient, and effective. The difference then was humans. She found Tanash that evening and told her what she had realized. Human liaison officers were on every major ship in the fleet. Every bridge crew in joint operations had at least one human translator, not just for language, but for culture and intent. Tanash listened, making notes. "We shared tactical information freely because we trusted the humans to handle it properly," Sharva continued. "They never used intelligence for political advantage. They never leaked secrets. They just helped us work together. Without them, we are back to suspecting each other of everything. Did the humans have any imperial ambitions? Tanash asked. Any territorial claims or resource demands? Sharva thought about it. No, they had a few modest worlds, some stations, but they never pushed for expansion. Other species offered them territory as payment for various services, and they usually refused. They said they had enough. Enough, Tanash repeated. When was the last time you heard any other species say they had enough? The question hung between them, unanswered. The pirate situation worsened. Without coordinated military response, the raiders grew bolder. A major shipping convoy was attacked and completely destroyed. Hundreds of crew members died. Billions in cargo was lost. The Council's trade networks began experiencing serious disruptions. Ships refused to travel through dangerous zones. Insurance costs skyrocketed. Goods that had flowed freely across the galaxy for decades became scarce and expensive. More problems emerged. Banking disputes that had been minor irritations became major conflicts. Humans had operated banking institutions that dealt fairly with all species. They charged reasonable fees and used transparent practices. More importantly, they could be trusted. Now, with human banks gone, species returned to dealing primarily with their own financial institutions. And those institutions favored their own species, charged higher fees to outsiders, and interpreted contracts in ways that benefited themselves. Trade agreements that had worked for years started falling apart. What did this clause actually mean? Who had the right to interpret that section? Without human arbitrators, every disagreement became a battle. Chen Li, the Gen economist, presented a report to the council showing that trade volume had dropped 18% in just 1 month. We are experiencing economic contraction across all sectors, he warned. If this continues, we will see a recession that affects every species in council space. Lord Tharmex dismissed the concern. The economy is naturally cyclical. This is a temporary adjustment. But Tanash noticed that Tharmex looked less certain than he sounded. The cracks in his confidence were showing. The refugee crisis reached a breaking point. Another plague outbreak, this time in 3 facilities simultaneously. The council's medical response was again slow and poorly coordinated. 5,000 more dead. Tanash finally presented her full report to the council. She had compiled everything: the border war, the military coordination failures, the economic disruptions, the refugee deaths, and hundreds of other problems, large and small. For 137 years, humans served this council, she told the assembled delegates. They asked for little and gave much. They were mediators, administrators, translators, doctors, teachers, and peacekeepers. They were not the most powerful species, but they were the most present, and we never noticed until they were gone. She displayed image after image of human contributions, photos of human medical teams treating injured aliens, records of human mediators bringing enemies together, files showing human administrators keeping complex systems running, data on human refugee resettlement programs. They were everywhere, Tanash said, doing everything, and we treated them as if they were furniture. Useful, but unremarkable. We dismissed their warnings, ignored their advice, and took their work for granted. They chose to leave, Tharmex interjected. That was their decision. Yes, Tanash agreed, and we gave them every reason to make that decision. How many times did you personally dismiss Ambassador Park's concerns as too emotional? How many human proposals did we file away without reading? How many times did we assign them responsibility without authority, work without recognition, and burden without support? The chamber was quiet. Many delegates looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. But whether at Tanash or at themselves was unclear. Tanash pulled up one final document. 3 months before they left, Ambassador Park submitted this report. It warned of an emerging threat in unexplored space. Strange ships, unusual energy signatures, evidence of an organized military force. She requested authorization for a diplomatic mission to make first contact and assess intentions. She paused, letting the tension build. The request was denied as an unnecessary expenditure on a hypothetical threat. The report was filed away. No one read it. No one followed up. No one cared. "What is your point?" Tharmex asked coldly. Tanash met his gaze. "My point, Lord Chair, is that humans tried to warn us. They tried to prepare us, and we ignored them. Just as we ignored everything they did until they stopped doing it." "Warned us about what?" another delegate asked. As if in answer, an alarm sounded throughout the council chambers. A military aide rushed in, her face pale. "Lord Chair, we have an emergency. Multiple unknown ships have entered council space. They are attacking frontier colonies, large force, advanced weapons. We have never seen this species before." Tanash felt ice in her stomach. She pulled up Ambassador Park's report and displayed the images from 3 months ago. Strange ships, unusual energy signatures, the same ships now attacking council colonies. "The Krath-Nor have arrived," Tanash said quietly. "And we are not ready." Lord Tharmex stared at the images, his 4 eyes wide. For the first time since the humans left, he looked truly frightened. The council chamber erupted into chaos. The Krath-Nor attacked with precision and overwhelming force. 3 frontier colonies were destroyed in the first wave. 2 mining stations were captured intact. A patrol fleet was ambushed and annihilated. The council lost 1,000 ships and 50,000 lives in the first 24 hours. The council mobilized for war. Every species contributed ships and troops. The combined fleet was massive, powerful, and completely uncoordinated. The Vrexian admiral insisted on aggressive frontal assaults. The Kashari commander wanted careful defensive positioning. The Torvan captain urged guerrilla tactics. The Orothians maintained their usual silence, which frustrated everyone. They tried to mount a coordinated counterattack. It was a disaster. Ships arrived at the rally point on different schedules. Communication protocols did not match. Tactical data was shared in incompatible formats. When they finally engaged the Krath-Nor fleet, confusion was everywhere. The Krath-Nor exploited every gap. When the Vrexian ships charged ahead without support, they were isolated and destroyed. When the Kashari fleet pulled back to defensive positions, the Krath-Nor slipped past them. When the Torvan ships tried flanking maneuvers, they found themselves in friendly fire zones because other species did not know their positions. The Council fleet retreated after losing 1/3 of its ships. The Krath-Nor advanced deeper into Council space. Commander Sharva survived the battle, but barely. Her ship limped back to Council space with heavy damage and half her crew dead. She filed a report that was painfully honest. "We did not lose because we lacked firepower or courage," she wrote. "We lost because we could not work together. We lost because we did not trust each other. We lost because the species that taught us how to cooperate is gone." Tanash obtained security clearance to access all human reports filed over the past 5 years. She spent 3 days reading everything. What she found made her want to scream. The humans had not just warned about the Krath-Nor once. They had filed 23 separate reports over 4 years. Early reports noted unusual scout ship sightings. Middle reports tracked patterns and predicted invasion routes. Later reports showed detailed analysis of Krath-Nor capabilities and suggested defensive strategies. Every single report was acknowledged and filed away. No action taken. No investigation authorized. No defensive preparations made. The final report, submitted 3 months before the humans left, included a specific request. Ambassador Park had asked for authorization to lead a diplomatic mission to make first contact with the Krath-Nor. She believed war could be avoided if dialogue began early. She had experience negotiating with aggressive species. She was willing to take the risk. The request was denied. The Council Finance Committee noted that funding a mission to contact a hypothetical threat was not a priority. There were more important things to spend money on. Tanash brought all of this to an emergency council session. She presented every report, every warning, every ignored recommendation. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. For 4 years, humans told us this was coming, Tanash said, her voice shaking with anger. For 4 years we did nothing. Ambassador Park begged us to let her try diplomacy. We refused. Now our colonies burn and our people die. And we have only ourselves to blame. Lord Tharmex tried to maintain control. Hindsight is easy. No one could have known the threat was real. The humans knew, Tanash shot back. They knew because they paid attention. They knew because they investigated. They knew because they cared about protecting Council space, even when the Council did not care about protecting itself. Other delegates began speaking up. The Arathian representative, who rarely spoke, rose to his feet. His voice was deep and resonant. My species brought concerns to this council 17 times in the past decade. Resource depletion, ecological damage, social unrest. We were told we worried too much. We were told more advanced species would handle these issues if they became serious. We were dismissed. He paused. The humans never dismissed us. They listened. They helped. They were the only species that treated our concerns as valid. A Torvan delegate stood next. Humans trained my staff on council procedures. They answered questions at any hour. They shared their knowledge freely. I thought they were just doing their jobs. I never thanked them. I never even learned all their names. More delegates spoke. Each one shared stories of human help, human patience, human presence. The testimonies painted a picture of a species that had given everything and asked for almost nothing in return. Finally, Chen Li stood. The Gen economist looked tired and sad. Humans mediated between my species and the Valter for 8 months. They listened to both sides with equal respect. They helped us find solutions we could both accept. When they left, we went to war within a week. We are killing each other now, and I cannot even remember what we are fighting about. The chamber fell silent. The weight of collective guilt pressed down on everyone. Did the humans leave because they knew this was coming? Someone asked quietly. Did they abandon us? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. A signal was coming through from outside council space. It had been broadcast on public channels and somehow reached council receivers. The screen showed a news program from human space. The interviewer was a young human woman. Her guest was Ambassador Park. The council watched in complete silence. Former Ambassador Park, the interviewer began. Many people are asking why humanity left the Galactic Council. Can you help us understand? Park looked older than the last time the council had seen her. Tired, but also somehow lighter, as if a burden had been removed. We served the council for 137 years, Park said. We offered what we had. Our neutrality, our willingness to compromise, our belief that cooperation could solve any problem. For many years, we felt we were contributing to something important. What changed? The interviewer asked. We realized our contributions were invisible, Park said, not because they were small, but because they were constant. We were always there, always helping, always trying to build bridges. And eventually, people stopped seeing us. They stopped hearing our warnings. They stopped valuing our presence. That must have been painful. It was, Park admitted. But more than that, it was pointless. If our warnings went unheard and our work went unvalued, we were no longer serving. We were simply attending. The council did not need us to leave. They stopped seeing us decades ago. We simply acknowledged reality. The interviewer leaned forward. The council is now at war with the Krathnor, the species you warned them about. Will humanity return to help? Park's expression was sad, but firm. The council has species with greater military power, superior technology, and advanced strategic capabilities. They have told us this for decades. Surely they do not need humanity's help now. But people are dying. Yes, Park said quietly. And that is a tragedy. But humanity cannot save species that will not save themselves. We cannot force cooperation on those who refuse to cooperate. We cannot make people value what they choose to ignore. So humanity will not return? I did not say that, Park replied. I said we cannot return to what was. Perhaps someday, when the Council learns to value all its members equally, we can build something new, something better. But that day is not today. The transmission ended. The council chamber remained silent. Lord Tharmex sat down heavily. He looked defeated. What have we done? He whispered. Tanash had no answer. None of them did. They had learned the truth too late, and the price of that lesson was measured in burning worlds and countless dead. The war had only just begun. The war lasted 6 months, and it went badly from the start. The Krathnor had been planning this invasion for years. They had studied the Council, identified its weaknesses, and designed strategies to exploit them. They knew the Council's greatest vulnerability was not military strength, but unity. Or rather, the lack of it. Every time Council forces attempted coordinated action, the Krathnor struck at the gaps between species. They intercepted communications and used the confusion to position their forces. They analyzed how each species fought and turned those tactics against them. When the Rexians charged aggressively, the Krathnor lured them into traps. When the Keshari defended cautiously, the Krathnor bypassed them entirely. Dozens of worlds fell, millions died, refugee populations swelled beyond capacity. The Council, which had seemed eternal and unshakable, began to crack apart. Some species started negotiating separate peace treaties with the Krathnor. The Torvin were first, surrendering 3 systems in exchange for a ceasefire. The Gen followed, abandoning the Valter to face the enemy alone. The Valter immediately did the same, abandoning the Gen. Tanash watched the Council dissolve with a mixture of rage and grief. Everything the humans had built over more than a century was collapsing, and she had been part of the system that let it happen. She formed a coalition with the few delegates who still believed the Council was worth saving. Commander Sharva joined her. Kelvin came too, along with Chenli and a handful of others. They represented less than a third of Council members, but they were determined. We must ask the humans to return, Tanash told the coalition. We must formally apologize for how we treated them and request their help. They will refuse, Chenli said. You heard Ambassador Park. They will not return to what was. Then we offer them something new, Tanash replied. Equal partnership, true recognition, a seat at the table with real authority, not just ceremonial presence. They drafted a proposal and brought it to what remained of the full council. The debate was bitter. Lord Tharmex had resigned in disgrace weeks earlier, but his supporters still resisted any admission of fault. We should not beg, one Vrexian delegate argued. It shows weakness. We are weak, Sharva replied bluntly. We are losing a war we could have prevented. We are watching our people die because we were too proud to listen. If asking for help is weak, then let us be weak. It is better than being extinct. The vote was close, but the proposal passed. Tanash was chosen to draft the formal message to humanity. She spent 2 days writing it, revising every word. The message had to be honest without being pathetic, apologetic without being manipulative. It had to acknowledge the truth of what happened while offering hope for something better. The final message was simple and direct. It acknowledged every failure. It listed specific examples of how the Council had dismissed human contributions. It apologized not just for ignoring warnings about the Krathnor, but for decades of taking humans for granted. It asked humbly if there was any possibility of humanity returning to help. The message was sent through official diplomatic channels. Then they waited. The response came 5 days later. It was not from Ambassador Park, but from Song Huan Lee, the human minister of foreign affairs. The message was brief. The government of humanity acknowledges the Council's message with gratitude. We appreciate the honesty and courage it took to send it. We bear no ill will toward any species and grieve the suffering you are experiencing. However, we must respectfully decline your request for our return. We cannot go back to a role where our contributions were invisible until absent. We cannot serve an organization that valued us only after we left. We wish the Council well in resolving its current challenges and hope that you find the unity and strength you need. Perhaps when this crisis has passed, we might explore new forms of cooperation built on mutual respect and recognition. Until then, humanity must focus on its own path. We hope you understand. With sincere wishes for your peace and prosperity, Minister Song Huan Lee. Tanash read the message 3 times. It was polite, respectful, and absolutely final. The humans would not save them. The Council was on its own. She shared the message with the coalition. No one spoke for a long time. "We deserve this," Kelvin finally said. "They gave us every chance. We failed them." "So what do we do now?" Chenli asked. "We survive," Tanash said. "Or we do not. Either way, we face the consequences of our choices." The war continued. Without hope of human assistance, more species withdrew from the Council. Some made deals with the Krathnor. Others retreated to defend only their own territory. The Grand Alliance that had stood for centuries fragmented into dozens of small, scared factions. The Krathnor did not need to destroy the Council. They simply had to wait for it to destroy itself. Tanash's coalition held out longer than most. They fought together, coordinated as best they could, and protected each other. But they were too small and too late. One by one, their worlds fell. 6 months after the war began, the Council officially dissolved. The member species signed a document declaring the alliance ended. They would each face the future alone or in small partnerships. The grand experiment in galactic cooperation was over. Tanash sat in the empty Council chamber one last time. The room that had once buzzed with dozens of voices was silent now. Dust gathered on the empty seats. The displays were dark. The symbol of the Council, which had hung in the center of the chamber for 300 years, had been removed. She walked to the section where humans had once sat. The chairs were still there, untouched. She sat down in one, wondering what it had felt like to sit here year after year, offering help that was taken for granted. Her communication device chimed. A personal message, not an official communication. She opened it and saw it was from Ambassador Park. "Dear Tanash," it read, "I hope this message finds you well and safe. I wanted you to know that some of us are watching and hoping for the best for you. You tried to make a difference. You saw the truth and spoke it, even when others did not want to hear. That took courage. The Council did not deserve to fail, but it failed nonetheless. Perhaps someday something better will rise from the ashes. If so, I hope you will be part of building it. Until then, stay safe. May you find the peace and unity you fought for, even if the Council could not. With respect and genuine friendship, Jiwan Park." Tanash sat in the empty chamber and cried, not for what was lost, though that grief was real, but for what could have been, if only they had learned the lessons sooner. That evening, she began recording a message, not an official report, but a personal testimony for future generations. "My name is Tanash," she began. "I served in the Galactic Council during its final years. I am recording this so that those who come after will understand what happened and why. Power is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes the most essential things are the quietest. The mediator who prevents arguments, the administrator who keeps systems running, the volunteer who shows up when others will not. Humans taught us this through their presence. We learned it through their absence. The lesson cost us everything. May you who listen to this remember what we forgot. Value what you have while you have it. See the people who serve before they are gone. Build your foundation strong and never take the mortar for granted. We learned this too late. Perhaps you will learn it in time. She stopped recording and looked at the empty human seats one final time. Then she left the chamber, turning off the lights behind her. The council was gone. The galaxy would have to learn to live with what came next. And somewhere, humanity moved forward on its own path, building something new, free from the burden of being forever unseen.